There is a photograph that was never supposed to exist. It was taken backstage in 1977, just weeks before Elvis Presley died. He is sitting alone in a chair, in full costume, rhinestones glittering under the fluorescent light. But his eyes look like a man who has already said goodbye. The people who saw that photo said the same thing. He looks like someone who lost something he can never get back. And they were right, because there was a secret Elvis carried from the time he was a little boy in Mississippi, a secret so personal, so painful, that he spent the rest of his life trying to outrun it. He buried it under the music. He buried it under the money and the mansions and the women and the pills. But you cannot bury something that lives inside you. This is the story he never told. Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8th, 1935, in a two-room shotgun house in Tupelo, Mississippi. His parents, Vernon and Gladys, had almost nothing. The walls were thin. The winter came right through them. But they had two boys. Jesse Garin Presley was Elvis's twin brother, born just 35 minutes before Elvis. Stillborn, already gone before he ever drew a breath. Most people know that fact the way you know a trivia answer. They hear it and move on. But stop for a moment. Just stop. Elvis came into the world holding his dead brother. They were buried Jesse in a shoebox, in an unmarked grave in Tupelo. There was no service. There was no stone. There was barely a goodbye. And Elvis, who was just minutes old, who didn't understand anything yet, somehow over the years, came to understand everything. He grew up as an only child who never truly felt like an only child. He grew up with a ghost at his side. Gladys, his mother, would whisper to him about Jessie. She would say, "You have to live for both of you now, baby." That sentence became the weight of his entire life. To understand Elvis Presley, you have to understand his mother. Gladys Presley was not just a mother who loved her son. She was the entire emotional universe Elvis was born into. She walked him to school every day, even when the other boys laughed. She sang to him. She held his face in her hands. She saw in him something that Tupelo, Mississippi did not deserve, something luminous and rare and fragile. And Elvis worshipped her back with a devotion that went beyond normal. Because somewhere deep in him, he believed that loving Gladys hard enough could make up for Jessie. That if he could be good enough, bright enough, devoted enough, maybe the universe would stop taking things from them. When Elvis was 13, Vernon was arrested and sentenced to prison for forging a check. Just like that, the man of the house was gone, and it was Gladys and Elvis alone. She took double shifts, she cleaned houses, she did whatever she could, and Elvis watched her do it. He watched her get older before she should have. He watched the light in her face dim a little, then a little more. He made himself a quiet promise in those years. One day I'm going to give her everything. He didn't know yet that it would almost destroy him to try. When Elvis walked into Sun's studio in Memphis in 1954, he was 19 years old, and he was nobody. Sam Phillips, the producer, had a secretary who wrote a note about the skinny kid who came in to record a song for his mother's birthday. The note said, "Good ballad singer. Hold. Hold." That's almost how it ended before it began. But Sam Phillips had been searching for something. He kept saying he wanted to find a white singer who could feel music the way the black artists he recorded felt it. Not imitate. Feel. And when Elvis came back, and they fooled around in the studio late one night, and Elvis started playing That's All Right, loose and laughing, not even trying, Sam Phillips sat up straight in the booth. "That's it. That's the thing I've been looking for." Within a year, Elvis was on the Louisiana Hayride. Within 2 years, he was on national television, and the country was losing its mind. Girls fainted in the aisles. Parents wrote furious letters. Ministers called him the devil. Elvis smiled that crooked smile and kept moving. But here's what the screaming crowds didn't know. Every night he came off stage, he called Gladys. Every single night. He told her what town he was in. He told her what the crowd was like. She waited up for him, every time. He bought her a pink Cadillac. He bought her a house in Memphis, Graceland. He gave her everything he said he would. But Gladys was not well. She had always been anxious, always been prone to worry. And now her son was somewhere on the road, every night, surrounded by strangers, in a world she didn't recognize. She started drinking, quietly at first, then not so quietly. In August of 1958, Elvis was 23 years old, and at the peak of his early fame when he received the call. Gladys was gone. Heart attack. She was 46 years old. What happened to Elvis Presley in those next few days? That is the part the cameras caught, and it was almost too painful to watch. He collapsed at Graceland, literally collapsed. The men around him had to hold him up. He threw himself across her coffin and sobbed in a way that made the reporters look away. He kept saying, "She's not gone, she's not gone." He had her buried beside where Jesse's unmarked grave was, back in Tupelo. He brought them back together, his mother and the twin brother he never got to know, as if he was putting the family back the way it should have been finally, in the only way he had left. And something in Elvis Presley went dark that month. He was drafted into the army, shipped to Germany. He came back different. The spark was still there, technically. He could still walk on stage and own every inch of it. But the people who were close to him, the ones who knew him before, they noticed it immediately. He was performing from then on. The joy had gone somewhere he couldn't reach. The years rolled forward. The movies came, and there were too many of them. Most of them forgettable, and Elvis knew it. He was artistically trapped in a machine that was making money and making him smaller at the same time. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, controlled nearly everything: the movies, the tours, the business. Parker took an enormous cut, some say as much as 50%, and he made decisions that kept Elvis in a comfortable, profitable box. Elvis wanted to tour Europe. He wanted to play London, Paris, Tokyo. He begged Parker for years. Parker always found a reason to say no. And the real reason, the one that came out much later, was that Colonel Tom Parker was an illegal immigrant from the Netherlands. He had no passport. He could never leave the country. And he would never, ever admit that to Elvis. So Elvis never saw the world. He played Las Vegas. He played stadiums. He gave everything he had to stages in America, and the world outside those borders remained forever out of reach. He married Priscilla in 1967. They had Lisa Marie. He loved his daughter with a purity that those who saw it said was the most real thing about his later years. But the marriage fell apart. Priscilla left, and the one family he had built with his own hands, gone. By the early 1970s, the pills had taken over. Prescription pills, dozens of them, prescribed by a doctor who said yes to everything. Uppers to get on stage, downers to sleep. Something for the weight, something for the back pain, something for the grief that had no medical name. He was eating to fill a hole. He was sleeping to escape the noise. He was taking pills to feel normal, because normal had become something he could no longer locate without help. In the last year of his life, Elvis gave 175 concerts. Think about that number. A man who was clearly unwell, clearly struggling, clearly falling apart. 175 concerts. He never stopped. People wondered why he kept touring when he was so obviously exhausted. Those who knew him said the answer was simple and heartbreaking. On stage was the only place he still felt like himself. Everywhere else, in the silence of Graceland, in the enormous empty rooms, surrounded by yes men and handlers and people who wanted something from him. He was just a sad, lonely man who missed his mother and never got to grieve the twin brother he shared a womb with, and never figured out how to be loved without an audience. But on stage, the lights came on, and for a few hours, he was the boy from Tupelo who was going to make something of himself, who was going to make Gladys proud, who was going to live for both of them. He died on August 16th, 1977. He was 42 years old, the same age, roughly, that Gladys had been when she died. He was found on the floor of his bathroom at Graceland. He was alone. Here is what they don't tell you in the documentaries, in the biopics, in the greatest hits compilations. Elvis Presley was not destroyed by fame. He was a boy who came into the world alongside a brother who didn't make it. He was a boy who made a promise to a mother who gave everything. He was a man who loved deeply and grieved deeply, and never once, not in 42 years, figured out how to put that grief down and just rest. The music was real. The talent was real. The love he poured into every single performance, that was as real as anything that has ever come out of American music. But beneath all of it was a quiet, aching boy who grew up in a two-room house in Mississippi, sleeping in the same bed as his parents, talking to the ghost of a brother he never got to know. He lived for both of them, like his mama asked, and he burned himself up doing it. When you listen to him now, really listen, not just to the voice, but to the feeling underneath it. You can hear it, the longing, the reach, something in every note that sounds like a man calling out to someone just out of reach. Maybe he was always singing to Jessie. Maybe somewhere Jessie heard him. Where? Jessie.